Mario Vargas Llosa. On Sunday. A teenage world. In the struggle of a young man for love, Mario Vargas Llosa shows the world of adolescence and the early youth. In this story, we can find the groups of friends and their codes, anguish, fears, and rebellion. This story shows how psychological processes occur in this trascendental stage of life. By Fernando Chelle. Following the Latin American roads, I got to Peru. Some months ago, when I wrote about Clarice Lispector, I noted how difficult it is to choose a specific writer in some countries full of remarkable short story tellers. Peru is one of those cases, and maybe Mario Vargas Llosa, Arequipa, Peru, March 28, 1936, is not as recognized as short storyteller as he is as a novelist, but the Peruvian Nobel Prize winner began his literary work precisely as a short storyteller. The short story I chose for the analysis is titled On Sunday, which is included in the book Los Jefes, translated The Cubs and Other Short Stories, originally published in Barcelona in 1959 by Editorial Roca. The Cubs is the first book ever published by Mario Vargas Llosa. It is his only short story collection, and it is a compilation of 6 short stories: Los Jefes, The Cubs, El Desafío, The Challenge, El Hermano Mena, The Youngest Brother, Dia Domingo, On Sunday, Un Visitante, A Visitor, and El Abuelo, The Grandfather. The Cubs was as relevant for Vargas Llosa as Big Mama's Funeral for Gabriel Garcia Marquez, for they were trampolines for the imaginative leap of their authors. The Cubs is a realistic book which shows urban topics, characters, and landscapes, typical in Vargas Llosa's literary work. This short story collection was awarded the Leopoldo Alas Prize in 1958, and published by Editorial Roca in 1959. There were 5 short stories in the book originally, all of the aforementioned short stories except for A Visitor. This short story is included in a Peruvian second edition of 1964, Populibros Peruanos, and it does not include The Grandfather. Its third edition, released in 1965, José Goddard editor, featured the 6 definitive stories that have appeared in the further editions. The stories featured in this book are inspired in young Vargas Llosa's own life. These short stories occur in different Peruvian places and were conceived by their author when he was between 17 and 19 years old. The main characters are often young males who meet in groups, a recurrent characteristic in Vargas Llosa's literature. It can be seen in On Sunday, The Cubs, and The Challenge, as well as in his novels La Ciudad y los Perros, The Time of the Hero, and La Casa Verde, The Green House. The events in the stories inside the book is always about a group of young men constantly challenging themselves, in a context of male dominance in which there is a cult for courage and despise for cowardice. On Sunday is a short story that reflects on the world of a group of teenagers from Lima in the 50s, but its main topics are friendship and the first love. This story can be considered somehow a documentary, for it happens in a recognizable place, for Peruvians, mainly, and it illustrates a determined time and some of its habits. Plot. The main topic of this story is the rivalry between 2 young men, Miguel and Ruben, because of their love to a girl named Flora. It begins when Miguel finally gathers some courage and declares his love to Flora. Miguel knew through Malanes, one of the members of the group named Los Pajaricos, the Birds, that Ruben had the intention to declare his own love to Flora, with his sister Martha as an accomplice. For that reason, and knowing that Ruben was the most popular guy of the school, acknowledging him as a natural-born Casanova endowed with a great physical condition that allowed him to become a swimming champion, Miguel decided to rush and declare his love to Flora to be the first one in her consideration. Although the young lady does not reject him, she decides to tell him about her decision in a different moment. When Miguel asks her out to the movies the next Saturday, Flora says that she would be visiting Martha, so Miguel begins to plan a strategy to ruin Ruben and Flora's encounter. First thing he does is to look for Ruben in the bar where the Birds usually meet. In order to stop Ruben from going to Martha's house, Miguel challenges him to see which one of them can drink more beers before passing out. Ruben, who had said at first that he could not stay in the bar, ends up accepting the challenge. Even though there is not a winner in this first challenge, Miguel achieves his purpose of delaying Ruben. But the drinking challenge was not the last one that night. After a series of circumstantial frictions, Ruben challenges Miguel to a swimming competition on the sea, a very dangerous challenge, considering that they were drunk and it was a winter night. Anyway, both challenges except the duel, in which the loser had to leave the way clear to the winner, who would be able to make his move on Flora without any obstacle. Miguel knew well that Ruben was a great swimmer, but the pressure laid on him by his friends made him accept the challenge, because refusing would be unacceptably coward. But his decision to accept the challenge has everything to do with Ruben's promise of leaving Flora alone if he lost. The competitors then headed to the beach and got in the very cold sea, while their friends waited on the strand. After a moment in which nothing relevant seemed to occur, the swimmers began to feel the severity of the frozen water and their organisms got affected by the alcohol and the relentless cold. Miguel then felt cramps and began to lose his ability to move his limbs. He got afraid in a certain moment, for he was not able to see neither his rival nor the strand. Suddenly, he heard the desperate voice of Ruben asking for help, and everything changed. He did not worry for his pain anymore and felt inspired to save his rival friend. He went floating to the place where Ruben was. Meanwhile, he remembered that castaways often sink their rescuers, so he told Ruben that he would help him, but made Ruben promise that he would not grab him, because if so, they could sink together. Heroically, Miguel took Ruben to the strand where they met with their group. Once they were safe, Ruben requested Miguel not to tell what happened in the sea to the others, and Miguel accepted. In reciprocity, Ruben admitted to his friends that Miguel had won the race. Miguel said nothing, but he was totally glad and conscious that he had the way totally clear to his love, and also knew that the news of this legendary swimming competition would soon be known by Flora. A teenage world. Even though the story is narrated from the perspective of a teenager, Vargas Llosa chose a third-person omniscient narrator, who presents the events as they occur. Anyway, at the beginning of the story we find some analepsis, flashbacks, which allow the reader to know some events prior to the moment of the narration. The story begins to be narrated in media res, in the moment in which Miguel declares his love to Flora. From now on, we witness a story about learning, related to the meeting of the first love, which almost everyone finds in the youth years. This short story recreates the psychological environment in that time of life. It is a narration full of anguish, fear, drama, defiance, courage, and love. As readers, at the beginning, we can feel Miguel's insecurity when he tries to declare his love, and then we feel his anguish when he receives Flora's answer. Later we witness the bar's atmosphere, when the young boys challenge each other and they finally have a showdown for the love of Flora. The characters are minimally described. Psychological aspect has a lot more of description than their looks. The only thing we know for sure is that Ruben is more stylized than Miguel, and we know nothing about the rest of the gang. Flora, the beautiful lady for which Miguel and Ruben have fell in love is, without intending it, the main motivation of the story, and is also almost a decorative character, because we do not know anything else about her after that brief dialogue with Miguel at the beginning of the story. The main characters of the story, Miguel and Ruben, suffer changes according to the situations. Once he has won the swimming race, according to Melanes, Miguel became a man, and the scared young boy with low self-esteem seems to have been left behind. On the other hand, we see that the change in Ruben is not that big. We always saw him as a very confident man, a total winner, but in the end, after his defeat, we see him more humble. We can appreciate social relationships between young boys in depth. They have their own codes, their interactions, some of them surreptitious, the ones which carry forward the action of the story. Let's remind, for example, Miguel knew that Ruben was going to declare his love to Flora, because the Melanes had told him. By the way, Miguel was being helped by Martha, his sister. Later on the story, in the bar, the group pressure leads to the realization of the beer drinking challenge, because at first, Ruben had thought about leaving the place. In the end, the friendship relations among the youth, sometimes authoritarian and even violent, trigger the outcome of the story, in which two young men defy each other to a swimming race, in winter, after having drunk a considerable amount of beer. In addition to showing the teenager world in a masterful way, Vargas Llosa created a growing suspense in the story. The swimming race, considering the climatic conditions and the alcohol in the blood of the competitors, make the readers imagine the worst possible outcome. But in the last moment, the story gives a somehow unexpected turn, and it finishes with a sentence that unarguably shows a happy ending. There was a golden road in front of him.